Hello, imaginary friends. On this episode, we'll be listening to a short story of mine called People of the Sun. Before we jump into it, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and enjoy.
The People of the Sun. Chapter 1. The Red People. Ucholo bent her head down to drink the muddy red water. She gritted her red-stained teeth. She knew she would be happy enough for it before the next march was over. When she had drunk all she could stomach, she plunged her hands into the muddy red clay and began to smear it all over her exposed skin till her skin and her tight-fitting robes were the same color. This done, she stepped back onto the shore, picked up her staff, and slung her bundle over her shoulder. Most of her tribe was already forming a single-file line behind Umakulu, the matriarch and Ucholo's grandmother. Umakulu began to sing the song of their people. They would all march to that song across the ancient paths of Ucholo's people, across the desert to the next waterhole. The song told the story of their people, where they found water and remembered their ancient wrongs. Ucholo sang along. She knew one day she would have to lead the song and teach it to her children and grandchildren, just as Umakulu had taught it to her. Single file, the Ababomvu, the Red People, trekked across the desert plain in Umakulu's footsteps. The mud on Ucholo's skin quickly dried and cracked. Her mouth was soon dry, and the hot wind that blew from the south filled her lungs with dust. Still they marched on. Any unnecessary stop could be fatal to the whole tribe. They would camp at nightfall, she knew. Then she would have a mouthful of muddy water. She pushed the thought from her mind and focused on the song of her people. This dirt is dyed by dearest blood. Of parents past, our people old, they trod this trail and tamed this land. This desert dry they did unlock, the secret springs that still our thirst, which are now ours, and ours alone. Ucholo looked down at the red clay. She thought of the generations that had trod this same path. She felt as though they were walking in line with her. It gave her strength. She soon felt the numbness of a long march come over her. She no longer felt her aching feet or her parched throat. Her legs seemed to move on their own, and her voice, which still joined in the song, sounded distant to her ears. At long last the sun reached the horizon. Umakulu gave the signal to halt, waking Ucholo out of her trance-like state. After a drink of grimy water and a few bites of food, the tribe formed a circle, each person sitting with their back to the tribe, blankets round their shoulders, and staves in hand. This way they slept. At first light, they drank again, and marched on. As the sun made its way once again toward the horizon, Ucholo felt weak. Her head felt light and dizzy. She looked up and saw a peak rising about the vast red plain like an island. The next moment she was aware of trees ahead. They had reached the watering hole. People broke ranks and ran forward. Ucholo was among them. She ran blindly until she was knee-deep in the reddish water. She cast herself down and drank until her stomach turned. When she finally raised her head from the murky water, she saw them. They were standing on the far bank, watching her and her people with dark looks. She stood slowly and backed away to the shore. The people on the other side of the water were all dressed in the blue flowing robes and blue turbans. They didn't move, but they watched everything carefully. As Ucholo's feet reached the dry land, she was aware of her grandmother at her side.
"Who are they, Umakulu?"
Ucholo asked.
"They are the Lulasa,"
replied Umakulu through clenched teeth.
"water thieves who do not honor our people's law. So those are the blue people,"
hissed Ucholo. The whole tribe was gathered round the two of them, all eyes fixed on the far side of the waterhole, shaking their staves at the blue-robed figures. One of the blue people took a horn that hung at his belt and blew into it. A shrill note sounded over the water, and in a moment more people in blue robes and turbans came rushing down to the water's edge. Some were brandishing short clubs with a great round knot at one end. Others had a similar weapon tucked in their belts. Ucholo's body tensed. She gritted her teeth. An ancient hatred spread over her. These blue people had dared to drink the water that belonged to her people.
"Begone!"
she hurled at them.
"This is our water. Thieves! 1,000 curses on you!
All the red people were shouting too. Ukolo felt ready to spring. She wanted to drive these invaders from her people's land, but a hand restrained her. She turned to look at her grandmother.
It is too dark for such work,
she said in a cold voice.
The sun has almost set. We must wait for morning.
Though she did not raise her voice, the whole tribe heard and went silent.
Drink your fill, and then we will withdraw, so they may not surprise us,
Umakulu continued.
The blue people cannot be trusted.
Ukolo had already drunk her fill, so she stood guard over those of her people who were still thirsty. Then they backed away from the water, through the trees, and back upon the great red expanse of the desert. Putting a large enough distance between them and the oasis to prevent a surprise attack, they formed a circle with a lookout in the center. All through the night, each member of the tribe would take turns standing and watching the trees before waking the next person in the circle. Ukolo's turn came just before dawn. The first pale light spread over the desert, making the island-like mountain to the right of the oasis gleam. A cool north wind blew in her face. It cooled her anger. She took a deep breath. Suddenly there was movement at the edge of the trees. 2 figures in blue robes were advancing toward them, holding their clubs over their heads.
Ngozi! Ngozi!
Ukolo cried.
Wake! Wake!
Her people were on their feet in a moment. Ukolo pointed at the 2 blue people with her staff. An angry cry arose. The 2 blue figures stopped.
They came to issue a challenge,
said Umakulu.
Ukolo, come with me.
Ukolo followed her grandmother out of the circle. They walked towards the blue people, who began to advance again. Ukolo felt her anger and mistrust rising again. Her whole body tensed, and her knuckles turned white as they gripped her staff. The 2 parties halted a stone's throw apart.
"This is our water!"
shouted one of the blue people across the gap.
"We were here first! Get you gone!"
Umakulu whispered to Ukolo, who nodded.
All the water in the desert belongs to us.
Ukolo called back.
You are trespassing on our land.
"We have the right of possession!"
Thieves have no rights, not even to their own lives.
Umakulu gave Ukolo an approving pat on her arm. The speaker for the blue people had to restrain the figure at his side.
"You will not drink another drop of this water!"
hurled the second of the blue people.
We will drive you from our water by force,
cried Ukolo. To her surprise, Ukolo felt her grandmother gently but firmly pull her back. She looked down and found her grandmother already heading back to the rest of the tribe. Ukolo threw a defiant look at the blue people before turning to follow. Before rejoining the others, Ukolo glanced back one last time. The blue people had disappeared into the trees. Meanwhile, Umakulu had walked into the middle of the circle and began to beat her staff against the red clay.
Wake the blood of our people,
she said coldly.
Wake our ancestors, to give us strength.
The whole tribe began to rhythmically beat the ground with their staves. Ukolo felt hot and bothered. Anger filled her, anger against the blue people. She found herself singing. She never knew who started the singing, but the whole tribe sang. We curse, and curse, and curse again. The dirty dogs, all dressed in blue, who wanting water, wander in, and deeply drink our dearest blood. Our people's pride they've plundered thus, these faithless fiends, unfit for life. The whole tribe was whipped into a frenzy by this time, pounding their staves into the ground and yelling curses. They jostled each other and moved in restless patterns. Ukolo found herself being forced to the edge of the circle. She had been gnashing her teeth and howling curses, sweat dripping down her forehead. Suddenly she felt the gentle north wind blowing against her back. It felt like a calming presence. She paused and felt it blow her heat away. She slowly turned her face toward it. She gasped as a wave of cool, soothing air washed over her. She took a deep breath and forgot the blue people. She took an unsteady step forward, out of the circle. Though it blew against her, the north wind seemed to call her in. She answered the call. She walked as one in a dream, breathing in deeply the deliciously cool and fresh wind. It was leading her towards the peak, which stood above the watering hole.
We're done.
A voice sounded close at hand, waking Ukolo from her dream. She gripped her staff tightly and spun round. To her surprise, she saw a boy not much older than 8. He was dressed in a robe, not of red or blue, but a deep yellow. Chapter 2. The Sun Child. Ukolo stared at the strange child who didn't seem to belong to either her people or that people.
I don't understand.
Ukolo finally managed to say.
You chose to follow my call,
said the boy with obvious pride in her.
Well done.
He was beaming at her with a joy and approval she had never experienced before. It was overwhelming and bewildering. She looked round as if for an explanation, but finding none, turned her eyes back to the boy. His smile deepened.
I felt the wind,
said Ukolo softly.
Yes, I sent the north wind to you. She is a great messenger.
Ukolo began to doubt her sanity. Perhaps the sun was affecting her. As if reading her thoughts, the boy began to laugh.
I'm quite real,
he said.
My name is Dodana Kasimu, but you may call me the sun if you wish.
Looking into his eyes, which shone so brightly that Ukolo thought he must indeed be the sun, she decided to put his words to the test and reached out toward him. The sun-child grinned as her fingers touched his shoulder tentatively. She let out a gasp.
This isn't possible,
Ukolo said.
Where did you come from?
He only grinned and took her hand. It was warm, and she felt warmth and joy shoot up her arm till she tingled all over.
Follow me,
he said.
I want to show you something.
Dazzled, Ukolo let herself be led. She cast a fleeting glance behind her and saw that her people had grown calm and were either sitting or standing still, looking in her direction. She wondered briefly if they had felt the wind too, or had been so baffled by her behavior that they forgot their anger for a time. She realized that she, too, was baffled, and laughed.
The sun really is affecting me,
she said aloud.
I do my best,
said the sun-child, grinning back at her.
Where are you taking me? Up there.
The sun-child pointed to the top of the peak. Ukolo gasped and shuddered. The sun-child stopped and turned to face her, a curious expression in his eyes.
Are you all right?
No one had ever asked her that before. She didn't know how to answer.
I've never been off the plane before,
she finally said.
It seems so high. I'm afraid I might fall off.
He pressed her hand and her fear vanished. She looked into his eyes. Nothing else seemed to matter.
I won't let you fall,
he said, and Ukolo knew it was true. They continued on. Soon the ground changed from red clay to brown rocky soil, which rose upward. It felt strange walking uphill. It didn't take long for Ukolo, who could walk for days on end over the plains, to feel the backs of her legs burning. She thought briefly that she should stop, but the sun-child looked back at her just then, and the thought vanished like mist in the sunshine. At length, Ukolo stood panting for breath at the top of the peak. Once she had recovered enough to take in the view, it took her breath away. The red desert spread away in all directions, as far as she could see, crossed here and there by ancient trails. Below, at the foot of the mountain, was the oasis. From up here it looked tiny, a dab of green in the middle of a vast redness. She could see people moving about on both sides of the oasis, but they looked so small she couldn't distinguish what color they wore. The north wind was blowing again. It seemed to blow right into Ukolo's heart, singing a song of which she did not understand the words, yet knew their meaning. For a long time she stood looking down at the tiny people and listening in her heart to the north wind's song. Her staff fell from her hand as her body relaxed deeply, for the first time.
Things look different from up here, don't they?
Said the sun-child, suddenly breaking the silence. Ukolo nodded, too moved and thoughtful to speak. The sun-child took her by the hand and led her down again. She followed him, the north wind song still echoing in her heart. She expected him to lead her back to the plain, but instead he led her a short way down to a grotto. At the back of the small cave bubbled a spring that leapt from the wall of the cave into a basin of clear water. From the basin came a small stream which quickly flowed underground. The sun-child held an earthen vessel under the spring, and then handed it to Ukolo with a smile. Ukolo took the vessel and drank. She gasped and nearly choked. She coughed and spluttered, but no sooner had she recovered than she drank so deeply that water overflowed the vessel and ran down her chin and over her red robes. Never in her whole life had she tasted water like this. It was cold, fresh, and sweet. She doubted that she had ever actually drunk water before. This This was life itself. All the aching and weariness she had felt melted away. She felt strong, light, and full of joy. She laughed. The Sun-Child laughed with her. He took the vessel and refilled it. She drank again. She drank until her thirst was quenched, and she was satisfied.
You may visit me any time,
The Sun-Child said.
you will find me here.
Then the Sun-Child led her out of the grotto and showed her the way down. Ukolo flew down the slope, no longer fearing the heights. A flash of yellow caught her eye, and she stopped. She saw it again and scrambled over to it. A long strip of cloth, deep yellow, was caught on a stone. Smiling deeply, she tied the cloth round her waist like a sash. Giving a cry of joy, she raced on down the slope toward the plain. Ukolo did not stop running until she was in the midst of her people, who scattered before her.
Water! Real water!
She cried.
Ukolo?
Someone asked. She laughed as she looked round at the startled faces that were beginning to gather round her.
Come with me.
She said eagerly.
Come on. Where is this water?
Asked Umakulu, coming forward warily. Ukolo threw out her hand in the direction of the peak.
Up there. Come and drink. It is too near the Blue People's camp,
She said, shaking her head.
We must first drive them off. Forget the Blue People,
Said Ukolo more earnestly.
leave them be, just come. No,
Said Umakulu firmly.
those dogs must be taught their place. Who will come with me?
Ukolo cried. She looked round at the faces of her people. Some were staring at the ground, some shaking their heads, some looked at the mountain with wistful curiosity.
I forbid this.
Hissed Umakulu.
I'm sorry, grandmother.
Said Ukolo, and she turned back toward the peak.
If you will come, you will understand.
But Umakulu did not come. Only 2 girls followed Ukolo, and they did so hesitantly, gripping their staves tightly. Ukolo kept beckoning to them, and ended by taking one in each hand. At the base of the mountain they suffered the same fear Ukolo had, and she marvelled that now she felt none. With much coaxing and reassuring, she led them up the slope to the grotto. When they reached it, both girls tumbled onto the cold stone floor of the cave, and lay gasping for breath. Suddenly, one of them gave a cry. Ukolo looked up from the girls to see that there were 2 people already in the grotto. One was the Sun-Child. The other was a boy, about her age. He wore blue robes, but instead of the usual blue turban of the Blue People, he wore one of deep yellow, and he was holding an earthen vessel. He looked at Ukolo and noticed her new sash, and he gave her a knowing smile. She returned it.
Welcome back,
Cried the Sun-Child, coming towards Ukolo. He squeezed her hands before turning his attention to her 2 companions.
And you brought friends with you, I see.
The 2 girls were staring at him in wide-eyed amazement. The Sun-Child began to laugh, and Ukolo and the boy with the deep yellow turban joined in.
I am quite real.
The Sun-Child said.
My name is Nodana Kasimu, but you may call me the Sun, if you wish.
The girls looked startled and looked at Ukolo. She smiled reassuringly. The Sun-Child offered each of them a hand.
Follow me,
He said.
I want to show you something.
Again they looked at Ukolo with a look of wonder and uncertainty.
Go with him.
She said. That seemed to assure them as they rose to their feet and went out with the Sun-Child. Ukolo turned back to the boy with the yellow turban. He was grinning at her, his eyes sparkling with amusement. I thought the sun was affecting me when I first met him too, he confessed.
So did I,
She said, coming closer to him.
I'm not so sure it wasn't. I think he might be the sun itself come down.
He may well be.
He agreed, taking a step towards her.
He is certainly like no one I've ever met before.
Speaking of meeting, I'm called Ukolo.
And my name is Mulalo.
Chapter 3. The Outcasts. By the time the Sun-Child returned, followed by the 2 wide-eyed and staffless girls, Ukolo and Mulalo were well on their way to becoming friends. The Sun-Child gave them a warm smile as he entered the grotto. Ukolo felt like she would do anything for that smile. It was pure heaven. When she finally became aware of anything other than him, her 2 friends were crowding close to her, wide-eyed in wonder.
Who is Ukolo?
One of them asked, in an awed whisper.
I don't know for sure,
Ukolo said.
but I would follow him anywhere. Did the North Wind sing to you?
The 2 girls nodded solemnly.
I can't explain it.
Said one of them.
The words were strange, but I felt like I understood them. I could have wept,
said the other.
I've never heard anything more beautiful.
Ukolo smiled and turned back toward the Sun-Child. He was filling an earthen vessel with water from the spring. His eyes twinkled at her.
Come and drink,
he said. Ukolo led the girls forward and noticed Mulalo was holding 2 other vessels, one in each hand. He offered them to Ukolo's friends, but they shied away from him, a look of apprehension suddenly leaping into their eyes. Like prey eyeing a predator, Mulalo looked from them to Ukolo, who smiled and stepped forward. She took the vessels from him and delivered them to her friends.
Drink,
she said.
You will understand better after you do.
They each took a tentative sip before draining the vessels to the last drop. Ukolo grinned as she watched, exchanging a knowing look with Mulalo. She then became aware of the Sun-Child, who had been observing the whole time, with a twinkle in his eyes. He now held out a vessel to her.
Well done,
he said.
Well done.
She took it and drank deeply. She let out a laugh of pure joy. Her friends joined in. Ukolo and her friends continued to laugh as they raced down the mountain, each with a deep yellow sash round her waist, running and leaping back toward their people. As their feet hit the red clay of the desert, she heard a shrill cry.
Ngozi! Ngozi! Ngozi!
Ukolo paused, and her friends with her. She looked round for signs of danger. She could see none. There was no movement among the trees or the oasis or on the open plain. No one but her and her friends. Her fingers closed instinctively, only to remember that she had left a staff on the mountain summit.
What do we do?
One of them asked, casting a frightened look at where their tribe stood in a circle, pounding the red clay with their staves. Ukolo swallowed hard.
They need to know,
she managed to say, and started toward them, once again. Any lingering doubt that she was the threat her tribe was preparing to fight vanished when she got close enough to see their faces. Her mouth went dry. Anger, even hatred, was written plainly on every face. Abuse and curses were hurled at her and her friends. Her heart sank. She hadn't wanted this. She stretched her arms out toward them. Her grandmother stepped forward with a cry and a sweep of her staff, as if to scare off some wild beast. Ukolo stopped and looked into Umakulu's eyes, and found hatred there too. It struck her like a blow to the stomach.
Umakulu,
she gasped.
Don't call me that,
her grandmother spat back.
You are trying to tear our people apart. You have made friends with our enemies. You are no longer one of us.
Tears rolled down Ukolo's cheeks. She had become her people's enemy. Umakulu seemed to choke back a sob.
Unless,
Umakulu continued with a more uncertain voice,
unless you cast off those sashes, forsake the mountain forever, and return to the ways of our people.
Ukolo felt that her heart would burst. She yearned to run into her grandmother's arms, but how could she forsake the Sun-Child? How could she go back to drinking small mouthfuls of muddy water after drinking her fill of the clear spring water? She turned to look at the mountain. The cool north wind blew gently in her face. Courage and a deep calm filled her as she breathed deeply. She looked at her friends.
I am for the mountain,
she said. One of the girls bowed her head in grief. With trembling fingers, she undid the knot that held up her sash. Ukolo's other friend, however, turned to take one last look at the mountain. The north wind blew in her matted hair, and she took a deep breath. She turned to Ukolo, smiled, and nodded. She and Ukolo turned their backs on the tribe and started back toward the mountain.
Will he let us stay?
Her friend asked, a tremor of emotion in her voice.
He must,
she replied.
It would be heaven, wouldn't it? I'm almost afraid to dare. And yet, if he doesn't, he isn't who I think he is.
They found the Sun-Child waiting for them at the base of the mountain with open arms. They rushed to him and threw their arms around him, who seemed for the moment to be big enough for all three of them. Their grief and joy found relief in tears. After they had wept for a long time, he gently whispered in each of their ears.
Well done.
Ukolo looked at him earnestly.
May we? Of course,
he replied. He took them by the hand and led them back up to the grotto, right to the edge of the clear pool.
You may wash yourself here,
he said.
I will wait outside. But we'll muddy the water,
Ukolo protested.
Don't be afraid,
he smiled.
When you step out, the water will be as clear as when you entered.
With that, the Sun-Child withdrew. The two friends looked at each other.
Are you getting in?
Her friend asked.
I'd do anything for him,
Ukolo replied. Quickly they removed their mud-encrusted clothes and slipped into the pool. For a moment the cold took their breath away, but they quickly got used to it. The water even seemed to grow warmer the longer they were in it. Ukolo felt the mud, the trail dust, and the weariness of life in the desert swept off of her by the current. Behind her the water ran red, but the swift current carried the red earth away, and before long the water ran clear again. She lowered her head under the surface and let the current wash her face clean. She felt better than she ever had. She felt clean and light. She rose out of the pool to get dressed and found that her old clothes were gone. In their place were clean robes of deep yellow. The two friends quickly got dressed and went in search of the Sun-Child. They found him sitting in the sunshine, singing happily to himself.
How do you feel?
He asked, before they could reach him.
Like I've been asleep my whole life, and I just woke up for the first time,
Ukolo said.
I'm glad to hear it,
The Sun-Child said with a grin.
And you just finished in time to help with our guests. What guests?
The Sun-Child pointed at 3 figures making their way up the mountain towards them. They were all dressed in blue, but the one leading the way had a turban of deep yellow.
Is that the boy I met last time I was here?
Ukolo asked.
It is. Did you like him? Very much. I hoped I'd get to see him again.
The Sun-Child seemed satisfied. The 3 boys were just below them now and quickly scrambled up to where they stood. All 3 of them stared wide-eyed at the girls, but mostly at the Sun-Child, who stood between them.
He's quite real,
Ukolo said.
His name is Nudona Kasimu, but you may call him the Sun, if you wish.
Everyone looked at her in surprise before all but Mulalo's 2 friends burst into laughter. The Sun-Child, recovering himself, stepped toward the 2 baffled friends.
Follow me. I want to show you something.
Go ahead,
said Mulalo. So his friends followed the Sun-Child up toward the peak, leaving Mulalo looking bemused with the 2 girls.
Hello, Mulalo,
Ukolo said. His eyes went wide.
Ukolo? Is that you? I didn't recognize you at all. What happened?
We've been banished. We're going to live here now, with him.
I'd give up my tribe to stay here,
He said.
though I'd rather my whole tribe come up.
Do you think they might?
He shook his head sadly.
I could only talk 2 of my friends into coming. My tribe is proud and holds on tightly to their traditions. They don't trust anyone from the outside.
But you aren't like that.
That's because I met him,
He said with a grin.
Just this morning my father had to hold me back from attacking a girl from your old tribe who was shouting insults at us.
That was me.
Ukolo giggled. Mulalo joined in the laughter.
Good thing I did meet him,
He said earnestly. Ukolo blushed, though she didn't know why. When the Sun-Child returned, Ukolo and her friend gave the boys water while Mulalo took the Sun-Child aside and held a hushed but earnest conversation with him. When the 2 of them rejoined the others, Mulalo wore an expression of relief and excitement, and the Sun-Child ushered the girls out of the grotto. Ukolo stood looking down at the plain where the red people were camped, and sighed.
Is there any hope for them? For our old tribes, I mean. There is always hope,
said the Sun-Child tenderly.
What better hope than that you are here? If you can change, so can they. But they kicked me out. I can't do anything for them anymore. And yet I still love them. That's as it should be. That's why there is still hope.
A sound behind them drew their attention. They turned to see 3 boys dressed in deep yellow robes, their hair tossed by the north wind, coming toward them. Ukolo gave a cry of joy and threw her arms around Mulalo. Chapter 4. A New People. The next morning Ukolo awoke from the deepest sleep she had ever had. She rose and went to the entrance of the grotto. The glow of the pre-dawn sun was turning the sky to gold. The north wind blew tenderly in her face. She took a deep breath. She became aware that someone was with her. She looked round and found the Sun-Child next to her, holding an earthen vessel up to her. She took it gratefully and drank, draining it to the last drop. She then stood looking at the vessel with a furrowed brow.
Is something wrong?
The Sun-Child asked knowingly.
If only there were a way to get the tribes to taste this water. I know they would understand,
she replied.
But since they won't come up the mountain, there's no way. Unless... Yes?
The the Sun-Child gently encouraged. Ukolo gasped and laughed.
Unless I take water down to them,
she cried. Ukolo flew into the cave and shook Mulalo awake.
We can take water down to them.
Huh? He replied sleepily, eyes trying to blink her into focus. His brain slowly processed her words. With a snap, understanding hit him, and he sat bolt upright.
So we can. It's a wonder I didn't think of that before.
The others were stirring now. Once they understood what Ukolo was saying, they jumped up too. Can we? Is it allowed? One of them asked.
Of course,
said the Sun-Child from the entrance of the grotto. Mulalo and his friends started to fill up earthen jars, while Ukolo and her friends fashioned slings out of the sashes. Before long, they all stood at the entrance of the grotto. Each wore a sling holding an earthen jar filled with clear water. The Sun-Child grinned at them.
Don't be afraid,
he said.
No matter what happens, the north wind will be with you.
The people of the sun started down the mountain. They hadn't gone more than a stone's throw when a great tumult arose from below, causing them to freeze. Confused shouts, piercing screams, and strange rumbling sounds all mixed together. Ukolo glanced at Mulalo. His brow was wrinkled in an expression of concern, his lips pressed tightly together. Ukolo realized her fingers had tightened, not around a staff, but gripping the sling that held the earthen jar of water. She looked down at the water, reminding herself why she was going down. She glanced back at the Sun-Child, just visible on the slope above. She took a deep breath and started down once more. The others followed. By the time they were halfway down, the noise had fallen into eerie cries and groans. Coming to the edge of the oasis, they found the undergrowth trampled and flattened. Here and there lay strange bundles, which to her horror, Ukolo realized were people. She ran to the nearest one of the blue people. She rolled him onto his back, and he gave a deep groan as she did. His face was ghastly pale and sticky with blood. She was aware that Mulalo was by her side.
We're too late,
she said, choking back a sob. The others were kneeling round the man now too, heads bowed in grief. Ukolo felt nausea, numbness, and heartache alternately. She had left the grotto with so much hope this morning, now this. The man groaned again with such deep pain and despair that they knew he must be dying. With trembling hands, she took the earthen jar from her sling. Mulalo put a hand on her arm, and she looked up into his face. His look was grim.
We can't do anything for him now,
he said.
I can make his final moments more comfortable. Raise him up.
She barely heard her own words, but Mulalo responded as if by instinct and slipped an arm under the man's shoulder and lifted him to a sitting position. Ukolo poured as much water as she dared into partly open lips. The man drank, sighed, and seemed relaxed into slumber. Mulalo gently laid him back down.
Is he?
Ukolo whispered.
Not yet,
he assured her.
He's still breathing.
As if by agreement, they all rose solemnly and fanned out, bent on easing the final sufferings of those who had once been their people. The next person Ukolo came to was one of the red people. She whispered the woman's name as she raised the earthen jar. Having recognized her, the woman tried feebly to push the jar away. Ukolo gently restrained her and gave her a sip of water. The woman's eyes instantly changed from a look of painful hostility to wonder. Ukolo gave her a sad smile. The woman smiled back, then closed her eyes with a sigh. Ukolo rose and moved to the next sufferer. "Mulalo?" called a voice unknown to Ukolo. She looked over her shoulder and gave a cry. The blue person she had first given water to was sitting up. Mulalo was already hurrying to his side. Ukolo had taken a few steps toward him when she heard her own name called. "Ukolo!" The woman she had just given water to was beginning to sit up. Ukolo rushed to her side to help her.
You're alive?
Cried Ukolo in astonishment.
Was that the water you told us about?
The woman asked.
It was. Would you like another drink?
More than anything. Ukolo gave another drink.
How do you feel?
Ukolo asked anxiously.
Weak,
the woman replied,
but strong enough to follow you to the mountain.
All around, the wounded that had drunk of the water were beginning to sit up.
Wait here,
Ukolo told her.
I need to help the others first.
For the next few minutes, Ukolo and her friends were busy giving water to the wounded, while those who were recovering slowly gathered with their own people. The two groups eyed each other uneasily, but the anger and hatred were gone. After giving water to the last of the wounded, Ukolo went to Mulalo.
How do we get them up the mountain?
She said.
Most of them are still too weak to walk.
There's nothing we can do,
he replied.
We can't carry them all.
But the war parties are still out there somewhere. What do we do if...
Ukolo broke off as Umakulu, leading what was left of the red people, stepped into the circle of trampled brush. Anger and hatred burned in their eyes, and their staves were raised, ready to attack. Without hesitation, Ukolo stepped toward her old people, arms outstretched. Before she could speak, a sound behind her caught her attention. Looking over her shoulder, she saw the blue people had appeared, brandishing clubs. They were trapped between the warring tribes. Mulalo took a step toward his father, and Ukolo turned back to her grandmother.
Umakulu,
She began.
I will not hear anything you have to say.
Her grandmother cried before she could continue.
Then don't listen. Drink, though.
With that, Ukolo took the earthen jar from its sling and held it toward the red people. Almost instantly, her friend, who had chosen to rejoin the tribe, broke ranks and hurried to take a deep drink.
I'm sorry I left,
She said to Ukolo.
I've regretted it every moment since. Do you think he'll let me come back? Of course.
Ukolo smiled. Her friend drew her deep yellow sash out of her gear and retied it round her waist. One or two others were hesitantly stepping forward. Ukolo gave each a drink of water. Their reactions caused others to step forward.
It's a trick!
Umakulu shouted.
Don't drink it!
A third of the tribe had crossed over by this time. Fear began to conquer anger. Umakulu looked round wildly. Between those wounded and those who chose to drink, the tribe had lost more than half its strength. With an oath, she called for the tribe to fall back. Most of those who hadn't crossed over followed, some more hesitant than others. A few, however, remained behind. Once they had all drunk, Ukolo turned to see that Mulalo had been equally successful. A large group of blue people were gathered round him, and the rest of the tribe had withdrawn. Mulalo looked over at Ukolo and grinned. She smiled back. Ukolo and Mulalo, both with streaks of grey in their hair now, stood hand in hand on a stone platform built on the peak of the mountain. Beside them stood the Sun Child, untouched by the passage of time. Below them was a city built of stone, with dozens of sparkling fountains and green gardens stretching halfway down the slope. All the people of the city were wearing robes of deep yellow. In the distance, a group of tiny dots was moving on the red plain, making for the Oasis.
Binti! Moana!
Ukolo called. Two young people who looked remarkably like Ukolo and Mulalo did when they were young came racing up the stairs of the platform.
What is it, Mother?
Binti asked.
New arrivals. Would you two take them, living water, and invite them up?
Of course, Moana said. The siblings turned and bounded back down the stairs.
Well done,
said the Sun Child, with a grin.
Thank you for making it to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let us know in the comments what you think about this story. And if you like our stories, please share them with people you think might like them too. And if you like more, click here or somewhere.